Thank you for joining me as I share with you my process for recreating this beautiful concept art that Mary Blair painted for Disney's Cinderella movie. I learned about Mary Blair as I was researching some art projects that I was going to be teaching my preschool art students. And that drove me to research and learn a lot more about her because I really loved a lot of the concept art that she created for several of Disney's movies. Cinderella is just one of them. But when I first started to learn how to paint with gouache, one of my goals was to be able to recreate several of her and a few other illustrators for Disney's concept art that they did for movies. There's just something about the artwork that created such a mood, and her style in particular I really enjoyed because you could see a lot of the rough brush strokes and the dry brush strokes in her backgrounds, which provided a lot of mood and movement. And she also, although this illustration in particular is not that colorful, she did many illustrations that were very full of color and just very whimsical. So this is my attempt at creating that background that she has there. At least part of the background, I know that some of it I will be covering. And if you noticed, I did not have a drawing in the beginning. I have found that putting in my drawing after I establish a background just works a lot better for me. I feel that when I put a really detailed drawing right from the beginning, I end up covering it up with the gouache because it's so opaque. And then that ends up really frustrating me because I'm constantly readjusting the drawing and trying to regain that drawing. So I'm using a white pencil to establish some of my lines, and then I went into some of the dark paint to start to draw in some of the darker elements. But in this little piece, I really did work from background to foreground. And but after I established that sky, I went into the little road that leads back into the castle, and I had to move on to a very tiny brush to get the castle in there. If you noticed, I just marked where the top of the castle spires were at. I didn't really draw that part. I used my very small angled shader brush for that. If you turn it in a variety of different angles, you're able to really get almost any kind of line that you want. So this is a really nice brush for a project like this. And I just kept adding like darker and darker paint because I don't know if you noticed, but the values in here kept shifting as the paint would dry. The darker values tend to dry a little bit lighter, and vice versa. Anything that's light usually gets a little bit darker, but my lights didn't because I was laying them in pretty thickly. I was trying to really mimic what she had in her little study as far as the brush strokes and the dry brush effects that she has. So I was trying not to fuss too much with some of the elements like the clouds or the moon. When I got to the horses, I did struggle quite a bit. I kept thinking of them as horses, and so they kept coming out a little wonky, and then I decided to just focus on the shapes that I was seeing in some of the lines, and that seemed to help. If you notice, I started off with a very, very light drawing and very thinned out paint, and I built up those layers little by little once I felt comfortable with the drawing. Same thing for the carriage. I was trying to make sure that you could really see the perspective and you could really feel the movement of these horses and the way that they were pulling the little carriage to the castle back there. I moved on to trying to get a little more of the perspective going by drawing in some of those lines in the road as well. Okay, I'm all done with my little concept art master study of Mary Blair from this little artwork that she did for Cinderella movie. And it is time to take the tape off. I feel like some of the lines in the road got a little bit too thick, but they're not bothering me, and if I try to mess with them, I am also going to be messing with all of the cool dry brush work that I did here. So this is what it looks like. A little rough. It was harder than I thought. This is probably like a 6x8, and it's on illustration board, crescent illustration board. And of course I did this with gouache. So here it is.